The laughter was louder than it needed to be. It spilled from a corner booth in the back of Carter's Bar and Grill. All polished leather and dim, amber light. Suits leaned in over whiskey glasses, their watches catching the glow like trophies. At the edge of it all stood a man in worn jeans and a flannel shirt, his sleeves rolled up, his hands still marked with grease from a day under the hood. Jack Turner didn't flinch as the jokes turned toward him. "Bet he's just here for the happy hour fries," one suit chuckled, not bothering to lower his voice. "That guy looks like he fixed the dishwasher. Not like he owns anything but a toolbox. Single dads don't build empires. They mop up after him." Jack didn't respond. He kept his eyes on the ice swirling in his glass. His shoulders stayed square, his jaw set, not in anger, but in quiet resolve. There was nothing weak about his silence. It was the kind of calm that builds under pressure, like steel forming in a forge. Across the bar, she watched. The woman who owned half the skyline downtown. She didn't laugh. She saw something the others didn't. And tomorrow night she'd come back, just to sit beside the man they tried to laugh away. Life's not always what it seems on the surface. If you're curious to see how this extraordinary night unfolds, like the video and hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us share more stories like this. Before the laughter in the bar, before the suits and the spotlight, Jack Turner's world was quiet. Not silent, not empty, just quiet. Every morning began the same. At 5:30 a.m. sharp, the rusted alarm clock buzzed to life in the small two-bedroom house on Willow Creek Road. Jack's feet hit the floor before the second ring. He didn't believe in snooze buttons, never had. Life didn't offer second chances so freely. He moved through the morning with purpose. Coffee first, black, no sugar. Then he packed a lunch for Lily, his 7-year-old daughter who still believed grilled cheese was a gourmet meal, if it was cut into triangles. Her lunchbox had a small sticker on the lid. "You got this, Daddy." He'd written it in Sharpie the week her mom left. Lily stuck a unicorn sticker next to it. Neither had peeled since. Jack wasn't always a mechanic. Once, years ago, he was headed somewhere else, drafting architecture plans and dreaming of city skylines. But dreams bend when life does. After Ellie walked out, after the house went cold and the diapers didn't change themselves, Jack traded blueprints for brake pads. He'd never complain, because Lily needed bedtime stories, and someone to show up at parent-teacher nights, and someone to clap the loudest when she sang off-key at the spring recital. So Jack built a different kind of life. One made of small, solid things. Oil changes, honest work, grocery lists, dinner by 6:30, bedtime at 8 sharp. His world was small but stable. The shop, Turner Auto, sat on the corner of Main and 3rd. It wasn't flashy. The sign had faded in the summer sun, and the waiting room still smelled faintly of old tires and coffee. But every bolt tightened in that place came with Jack's signature. Integrity. People didn't always see him. Not really. They saw the flannel, the grease under his nails, the calloused hands. They saw single dad and working class and assumed the story ended there. But inside, Jack was made of something stronger than first impressions. He didn't chase attention. He didn't post his parenting wins on social media. He didn't have time to explain why he hadn't gone back to school or how many nights he sat at the kitchen table, balancing bills while Lily slept with her stuffed giraffe under one arm. Jack just kept going. When the water heater broke, he fixed it. When Lily cried about a girl who didn't invite her to a birthday party, he made her pancakes with chocolate chips and let her pick the movie. When the holidays came and the house was too quiet, he hung the stockings anyway. He was the kind of man who remembered birthdays, returned grocery carts, and pulled over to help strangers change a flat tire. The kind of man people often overlooked in rooms filled with louder voices and shinier shoes. And yet, Jack never resented the silence. In fact, he found comfort in the rhythm of his days. Until that Thursday night. The babysitter showed up late, and Jack almost canceled. But his buddy Tom insisted they get a beer. Just one, man. You never go out. So Jack wiped his hands clean, changed into his one decent shirt, and walked into Carter's Bar and Grill expecting nothing. What he got was a front row seat to exactly how the world saw him. Just a guy in work boots and flannel. A punchline in a room full of polished strangers. But what they didn't know, what she would come to see, was that Jack Turner wasn't some background extra in their champagne scene. He was the main character in a quiet, beautiful life. A life stitched together by love, grit, and the kind of strength that doesn't need a spotlight. Back in the low-lit hum of Carter's Bar and Grill, the next night wasn't much different on the surface. The same booths, the same whiskey pours, the same polished laughter echoing from the back table. But this time she returned. Claire Winslow, CEO of Winslow & Hart, one of the fastest-growing real estate firms on the East Coast. Known for her icy confidence and ruthless precision. She walked in alone, no entourage, no distractions. Just a quiet scan of the room until her eyes landed on him. Again, Jack Turner sitting at the same stool, sipping the same drink. He noticed her but didn't stare. Just nodded once like a man who never expected anything and was grateful for every small surprise. Claire took the seat beside him. "Didn't think you'd be back," Jack said, voice steady. "I didn't either," she replied, smoothing the sleeve of her tailored coat. "But here I am." They talked. Not about real estate or auto repair. About coffee. About what makes a good grilled cheese. About the sound tires make on gravel roads in fall. It was simple, real, and Claire hadn't felt that in a very long time. But not everyone appreciated the moment. From the corner booth, Nathan Kelton watched with rising irritation. Partner at Claire's firm, old money, sharper suits than morals. He stood, glass in hand, and walked over with a smirk born from too many unchecked years of being the loudest in the room. "Claire," he said with too much charm. "Didn't expect to see you here again." She gave a polite smile. "Just needed a break from boardrooms." Nathan's gaze flicked to Jack. He didn't offer a hand. "And you are Jack," he answered simply, meeting Nathan's eyes without flinching. Nathan let out a soft scoff. "The mechanic." He turned back to Claire. "You're full of surprises. I thought we were meeting with investors tomorrow, not prepping for a garage sale." Claire's jaw tightened, but Jack's face didn't change. He simply said, "You know, sometimes the guy who changes your oil knows more about engines than the guy driving the car." Nathan chuckled, but there was tension in his grin now. "I see you've got grit. That's cute. But let's be honest, different leagues." Claire started to respond, but Jack gently placed his glass down and looked at Nathan. Not with anger, but with the kind of calm that made loud men nervous. "You ever lose a client at 2 a.m. because their brakes failed on the interstate?" Jack asked quietly. Nathan blinked. "Can't say I have. I have. And I've had to look their kid in the eye and explain why the fix came too late." Claire's expression shifted. Something in her chest tightened. "See," Jack continued, "you don't need a boardroom to understand responsibility. You just need someone counting on you every single day." Silence. "Dick." Nathan forced a laugh and turned away, waving his glass like the whole thing was beneath him. "Enjoy your small talk," he muttered, walking back to his booth. Claire sat still, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. Jack looked at her. "I didn't do it for you." She smiled then, faint, thoughtful. "I know." The moment lingered. Outside, rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady. Inside, something had shifted. Jack didn't rise to Nathan's bait. He didn't argue or shout or try to prove himself. He simply stood where he always had, solid, grounded, unshaken. And Claire? Claire saw something most people missed. Not charm, not polish, character. It was 2 weeks later when everything shifted. The bar had become a quiet ritual. Every Thursday, Claire showed up alone, and Jack was already there. Same stool, same drink. No labels, no pressure, just two people talking about life beyond balance sheets and brake pads. But that Thursday, the bar was full of tension. Claire's firm had just closed the deal of the quarter. A massive commercial development contract that would put them on the national radar. Nathan Kelton, chest puffed, had invited the team to Carter's for a victory round. Claire hadn't planned to go, but when she walked in and saw Jack seated alone at the bar, she didn't hesitate. She sat beside him just like always. Nathan spotted her instantly. He swaggered over, tie loosened, confidence high. "Claire," he called loudly, "tell me you're finally going to bring your friend into the big leagues. Or are we still pretending the flannel's just a fashion choice?" Jack said nothing. Claire didn't flinch. Nathan leaned in closer. "Come on. If he's got all that wisdom, let him weigh in on the Monroe deal. Let's hear the mechanic's take." Jack turned slowly, his voice calm and even. "The Monroe deal?" Nathan chuckled, waving a drink. "Yeah, the one where we're tearing down that old warehouse district off 8th, replacing it with condos. Big money." Jack's brow furrowed. "That area's zoned for mixed use, isn't it?" Jack asked. Nathan smirked. "Sure. So, you're going to have traffic bottlenecks from both residential and commercial lanes. Plus, the soil there's unstable. I used to work out of a garage 2 blocks from that site. Flooded every spring." Nathan's grin froze. Jack continued, unfazed. "You're going to need at least 3 feet of soil remediation. You bring in the condos without fixing that, and your foundation will shift within 5 years. Fast money, short life. But what do I know? I just fix things." A beat of silence. Claire turned toward Nathan, her eyes narrowed. "Is that true?" she asked. Nathan hesitated, then bluffed. "That's exaggerated. We had engineers look at it." "Did you look at the flood data?" Jack asked, tilting his head. "Or the city's redevelopment plans?" "From last year." Nathan's silence spoke volumes. Claire pulled out her phone and tapped quickly. After a moment, her expression darkened. "Jack's right," she said quietly. "The city posted a bulletin about soil mitigation last fall. It was buried in the public works reports, but it's there. And Nathan, you didn't flag it." I didn't think it was relevant," Nathan stammered. "You didn't think?" Claire replied, voice low but sharp. "You just wanted a fast headline." Around them, the bar had gone quiet. A few heads turned. Conversations slowed. Claire looked at Jack. "How did you know all that?" He shrugged. "I read city plans. Used to design buildings before life changed. I still keep up. Can't turn that part of my brain off." Nathan scoffed. "So what? You're some architect turned oil changer?" Jack finally turned to face him fully. "No. I'm a dad who reads every night after his daughter falls asleep because he still cares about the world she's going to grow up in." Claire leaned back, exhaling slowly. Her gaze didn't leave Jack's face. "I should have brought you into this sooner," she said. Nathan looked stunned. "You're not serious." "I am," Claire replied. Jack sees the big picture and the cracks under it. "That's rare." She turned to Jack again. "Would you consider consulting on this project? We need someone grounded. Someone who tells the truth." Jack looked down for a long moment, then smiled, gentle and unassuming. "If it means making sure you don't build something that falls apart in 5 years. Yeah, I'll do it." The tension broke. Not with applause, but with a hush. A realization. They'd underestimated him. He wasn't just the man at the bar. He wasn't just the single dad in work boots. He was the one who saw what others missed. Who never stopped building, even when no one was watching. The bar wasn't louder. It was quieter. The kind of quiet that falls when a room collectively reconsiders everything it thought it knew. Jack didn't gloat. He didn't puff out his chest or slap the bar like he'd just won something. He just sipped his drink, same as always, while the air around him thickened with a different kind of attention. Claire said nothing more, but her body language spoke volumes. She turned toward him, not just with her chair, but with her energy. Open, respectful, present. At the back booth, Nathan Kelton sat alone now, his glass half full, his pride half empty. He stared at the table for a long moment, then stood and walked back over, not with arrogance this time, but with something closer to awareness. He He stopped a foot away, eyes lowered for once. I didn't give you a fair shake, Nathan said, voice low. That was on me. Jack nodded once. No bitterness. Just truth. Lot of people don't. Nathan shifted awkwardly. You were right about the floodplain. My team missed it. We've already flagged the site for review. Good, Jack said, not with triumph but with quiet assurance. There's still time to fix it. Nathan stood there, searching for something else to say. When he found nothing, he simply offered his hand. Jack took it firm, honest. A man's handshake, not a show. Claire watched it all unfold like someone watching a wall finally crack open. As the evening wore on, others began drifting closer. A younger guy in a collared shirt, fresh out of grad school, sat on the other side of Jack and asked him about urban soil risks. Middle-aged woman, one of the firm's financial officers, leaned in and asked how Jack kept up with city reports. Jack didn't hold court. He didn't bask in it. He just answered questions like he always had, with clarity, with patience, with the lived-in tone of someone who wasn't trying to impress, just trying to help. That kind of floodplain can ruin your budget, he said, pointing to a map someone pulled up on a phone. Doesn't matter how nice your building looks if it sinks 6 inches every spring. The group nodded, taking notes. Claire stood off to the side, just watching for a while. There was something almost sacred about how normal he made it all feel. No big pitch. No personal agenda. He wasn't trying to sell himself. He never had been. He just knew things. Things no one had bothered to ask about until now. And slowly, the energy in the room shifted. Conversations quieted when Jack spoke. People listened. Not like you listen to a boss out of obligation, but like you listen to someone who's been through something real. The bartender, Tony, came over with a fresh drink and set it in front of Jack. On the house, he said with a small smile. For keeping the city from crumbling. Jack chuckled. Just telling the truth. That's the rarest thing in here, Tony said. Later, as people began drifting out, Claire lingered. She waited until it was just the two of them. Again, sitting shoulder to shoulder at the bar like it was week 1. She looked over at him. Not the way people look at a mystery anymore, but the way you look at a friend you're still getting to know. You changed the way they see you, she said. Jack shook his head gently. No, I just showed up the same way I always do. They changed how they were willing to look. Claire smiled. You ever think about doing more consulting? On the record. I mean, he raised an eyebrow. And leave the shop? Maybe, maybe not. Just seems like more people could use what you've got. Jack stared into his glass, thinking, not about money or titles or headlines, but about what mattered. Lily. The shop. Stability. Truth. I'll think about it, he said softly. Claire stood to leave, then paused. Same time next Thursday? Jack grinned. I'll be here. And she left with less armor this time. Less pretense. Just a woman walking out into the night, carrying something new, respect. Not just for Jack, but for everything she'd never known she was missing. By early spring, the change was visible, not loud, not flashy, just real. The old city garage lot on 8th Street, once forgotten and fenced off with rusted chain link, now buzzed with activity. But not bulldozers and cement trucks. Not yet. Instead, a group of young planners gathered there every Thursday morning, clipboards in hand, boots crunching over gravel, listening as Jack Turner, yes, that Jack Turner, walked them through site drainage, runoff grading, and the history buried in the soil. He wasn't wearing a suit. He never did. Still wore his flannel. Still kept his sleeves rolled. Still had a wrench in the back pocket of his jeans from fixing a stubborn alternator at the shop that morning. But now, people were listening. Winslow and Hart had launched something new after the Monroe deal was saved, a city-first initiative called Foundations. Part mentorship, part infrastructure think tank. Focused on working-class insight and boots-on-the-ground knowledge to build smarter, stronger communities. And Claire? She named Jack the lead advisor. Not in title only. She gave him real authority, real voice, real space. Jack never moved into a corner office. He didn't want one. He split his time between Turner Auto, still fixing cars 3 days a week, and the field sites where he helped bridge the gap between theory and truth. The interns called him Mr. Jack. The developers called him the guy who saved us millions. The firm called him essential. But Jack didn't care what they called him. He just kept showing up. Same time every week. Sometimes with Lily in tow, especially on Fridays when school let out early. She'd sit on the tailgate of his truck with her lunchbox, watching her dad talk about subfloors and frost lines like he was teaching magic. She didn't see a man who had once been laughed at in a bar. She saw her hero. Claire came by often now, sometimes with documents, sometimes just with 2 coffees and a quiet smile. One afternoon, standing beside Jack under the shadow of a developing framework, she looked out over the land that nearly slipped through their fingers. "You know," she said, "I used to think leadership looked like boardrooms, speeches, pressure." Jack didn't look away from the ground he was studying. "Sometimes it does." She nodded. "But sometimes it looks like this. Gravel under your boots and people who trust you without needing a title." He finally turned to her. "It's not about being in charge. It's about being accountable." Claire smiled. "That's why they listen to you." Not long after, the firm started sending junior execs to Jack for field mentorship. Not for show, for learning. He taught them how to read the land, not just maps and data, but the feel of it. The way water moved through it. The way old buildings sank or stood depending on what lay beneath. He taught them to slow down, to ask questions, to listen to the ground and the people who worked it. And something shifted in the city. Not overnight, but steadily. Developments were built with intention, not just profit. Projects were rooted in knowledge that came from people who lived there, not just those who signed checks. And Jack? He never chased credit. Never asked for his name on plaques or brochures. But people knew. They knew that the man with the quiet voice and grease-stained hands had changed how they built things from the ground up. And back at Carter's Bar and Grill, Thursday nights stayed the same in all the right ways. Jack still came in around 6, still ordered his drink, still wore his flannel and nodded at Tony the bartender like they'd been best friends for years. But now, when he walked in, heads turned with recognition, not curiosity. Nathan Kelton always greeted him respectfully now, usually with a subtle wave from the corner. Never overplayed it, just enough to show he understood. And Claire? She still took the stool next to Jack's. Every Thursday, without fail. Sometimes they talked about the work. Sometimes about Lily. Sometimes about nothing at all. Just 2 people. 2 stories. Sitting side by side. No more masks. No more misunderstandings. Just a quiet kind of peace, hard-earned and honest. Have you ever been the quiet one? Doing the work, holding it all together while no one seems to notice? Jack's story reminds us that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just shows up day after day with steady hands and a good heart. If this touched something in you, leave a comment. Tell us about a moment you felt overlooked, or a time you quietly made a difference. And if you'd like more stories like this, hit that subscribe button. Thank you for being part of this story.